The Rainy Night House, presented by MystKatha. There are nights when the sky weeps, not with the gentle sorrow of a passing cloud, but with a deep, inconsolable grief. The rain on this particular night was of that kind, a relentless percussive drumming that sought to wash away memories the earth itself wished to forget. It fell upon a village that had long perfected the art of silence, a place nestled between forgotten roads and slumbering hills. Here, darkness wasn't merely the absence of light, it was a presence, a heavy blanket woven from secrets and time. The streets, slicked with a mirror-like sheen of water, reflected the stuttering pulse of a lone, weary streetlight, its intermittent glow revealing nothing but the rain's endless descent. Every door was bolted, every window a dark, vacant eye. The village was a tomb, sealed not by stone, but by a collective unspoken agreement to ignore the things that stirred in the witching hours. It was a place that had learned the hard way that some nights are not meant for the living. Yet, at the very edge of this sleeping hamlet, where the lane dissolved into a muddy track, one structure stood in defiance of the curfew. It was a house that seemed to lean against the wind, its silhouette a jagged tear in the fabric of the night. Older than the village records, it was a place of whispers and warnings, a repository of all the fears the townsfolk tried to keep locked away. And on this night of torrential sorrow, it held a single defiant point of light. A lone window glowed with a warm, flickering luminescence, a fragile beacon in an ocean of oppressive black. It was a candle, perhaps, or a low-burning lamp, suggesting a vigil. But this light was not a sign of comfort. It was a question mark, a challenge to the suffocating quiet. It signaled that the house was not empty, that the silence was not absolute. For inside that house, someone was still awake, someone was waiting, or perhaps being waited for. Some places are not meant to be found, lying dormant for the unfortunate to stumble upon. This house was one such place, a skeletal silhouette against a violent sky. It stood for generations, untouched by the world around it. Its walls, stained by monsoons, absorbed the darkness, and its windows stared out like vacant eyes. The locals called it the House of Whispers, warning travelers to stay away, no matter how fierce the storm. But on this particular night, the storm was a roaring beast of wind and water, and its fury was absolute. Caught in its wrath was a man named Aravind, a young schoolteacher on the final leg of his journey to a remote village. He was seeking a slower pace of life. But the sky broke open. The rain came in blinding walls of water, turning the road into a river of mud. His motorcycle sputtered and died, leaving him stranded in the suffocating darkness. The wind howled, chilling him to the bone. It was then through the deluge that a fork of lightning illuminated the landscape, and he saw it. The house. A dark, jagged promise of shelter. Any warnings he might have heard were drowned out by the primal need for refuge. The cold was seeping into his marrow, and the storm showed no signs of abating. He abandoned his motorcycle and began the arduous walk, his feet sinking into the sodden earth. The house seemed to pull him in with a silent, magnetic invitation. As he drew closer, the scale of its decay became apparent. A sagging veranda, paint peeling like sunburnt skin, and an overgrown garden clawing at the foundations. He hesitated on the porch, the roar of the storm slightly muffled. A profound sense of unease washed over him, a feeling that he was an intruder. But another crash of thunder, so close it shook the floorboards, spurred him into action. He was a man of logic, a teacher who believed in reason, not old wives' tales. It was just an old, abandoned, and mercifully dry house. With a deep breath to steady his nerves, he reached for the heavy, iron-ringed handle. His name was Aravind, a new schoolteacher, and on this stormy night, he took shelter in this abandoned house. There was no one in the room, but beside his shadow, another began to appear. In the oppressive quiet of the derelict house, every sound was magnified. The relentless drumming of the rain against the roof, the mournful groan of timber settling in the damp, the frantic, sputtering dance of his single candle flame. Aravind sat frozen, a prisoner in a cage of shadows, his senses stretched to their breaking point. He was listening, not for anything in particular, but for everything at once. He was listening for the telltale creak of a footstep that wasn't his own, for a shift in the oppressive atmosphere that would signal he was no longer alone. The silence that answered was profound, a heavy blanket woven from dust and decay. It was a silence that felt watchful, intelligent. He held his breath, trying to distinguish the beat of his own heart from the storm's relentless pulse. It was then that he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. It was faint, impossibly close, a dry, sibilant hiss that slithered through the air, cutting through the ambient noise of the storm. It was the sound of a breath, drawn in the darkness right beside him.
"Don't!" Aravind's blood ran cold. It was a single word, barely a wisp of sound, yet it carried an undeniable weight of command. He snapped his head around, but there was nothing. Only the deep, impenetrable blackness that pressed in from all sides, a solid wall just beyond the candle's weak halo. He told himself it was the wind, a peculiar trick of the acoustics in this decaying place. The house was full of drafts, full of strange noises. It had to be the wind. But the sound hadn't been like the wind. It hadn't whistled through a crack or howled down a chimney. It had been intimate, personal. It felt as though someone had leaned in, their lips just inches from his ear, and exhaled that one solitary word directly into his soul. He strained his ears again, desperate to hear anything that would prove him wrong, anything to debunk the terrifying possibility his mind was screaming at him. And the house obliged. "Don't go back." This time, it was clearer. A chilling voice, ancient and dry as dust, yet sharp with a terrifying clarity. It wasn't just in his ear anymore, it seemed to emanate from the very structure of the house itself. The voice resonated in the floorboards beneath him, vibrated in the damp air he breathed. It was a chorus of decay, a symphony of rot given malevolent life. The voice said, "Don't go back." A cold, final certainty settled in Aravind's gut, displacing the fear with a dawning, horrifying understanding. This wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a trick of the wind or a figment of his imagination. It was the house. The house was speaking to him. And as this realization cemented itself in his mind, the voice whispered its final damning promise, a verdict delivered from the shadows that now seemed to writhe and coalesce behind him. This house never lets anyone leave.
Before leaving, Aravind found a letter, signed "I'll return soon," but dated 1948. This was the Rainy Night House. For more mysteries, subscribe and keep watching MystKatha.